Hello, everyone. Welcome to our show today called 英文. My name is John Drummond, or Young Holland.
Hello, 大家好，欢迎各位再度来到 英文，我是 Angela.
We have a great episode for you today with the very talented artist here in Taipei, Tom Rook.
没错，今天呢，英文邀请到了英国插画家 Tom Rook 来跟大家谈他一路走来是怎么样从本来爱画画兴趣发展到现在闯出自己地图街道艺术的一片天。
My guest today is from England, but has been living in Taiwan for over 10 years now. He is an incredibly talented visual artist, a lover of traveling, exploring, expressing himself, and so much more. So everyone, please welcome my good friend, Tom.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, John.
Boom!
Nice to meet you.
I like to high five on the show to make it official. Welcome to英文, Tom. It is a pleasure to have you on the show. I wanted to start with a little bit about kind of what you do in terms of the art world. Well, fun fact is we did a movie shoot together.
Oh, yeah.
A few years ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that was how we kind of met. But at the time, I didn't connect that to your art.
Okay.
And so just recently, I was at Red Room Rendezvous and got to see a lot of your artwork. And I was like, I need to know this human. And sure enough, yeah, here we are now. So can you explain a little bit about what you are doing in the art world?
访谈一开始呢，这样提到说，其实几年前他跟我们插画家 Tom 有一起在一部电影里面参与演出哦，但却是一直到最近，因为他去一间红房餐酒馆，看到他惊为天人的地图画作，才又跟 Tom 联络上。那如果还没听过这位插画家，或是没看过他的作品，不知道他在画什么的听众朋友，不用担心，我们马上呢就来帮你认识一下。他呢手画了不少城市乡镇的 3D 街道地图，就跟一般你看到地图很像，但是是立体的。好，就是说你可以很清楚的呢看到哪条路哪条街上有什么树啊、招牌等等，画得无敌仔细。而且他除了有从俯瞰视角切入的作品以外呢，他也有在最近尝试全景图的风格哦，整个就是很可以让你对整个地区一览无遗，有点那个 GTA 侠盗猎车手那个电动游戏的感觉。那这边我们说的俯瞰图、全景图，英文可以用 bird's eye view 还有 panorama 来表示。好， bird's eye view 很简单，我们从字面意思就可以知道是这个鸟的视线。好，从鸟的视线去看出去嘛，就是可能他们在天上飞，从天空俯瞰这样子。好， bird's eye view。那 panorama 因为字首 panel 有全部的意思 P-A-N-O， 好，那字尾 R-A-M-A 带有景象、景观的意涵，所以两个拼在一起就变成我们讲的全景。你看英文单字给它这样拆开来学，是不是好像变得简单又好玩嘞？赶快来听 Tom Rook 的故事吧。
The main thing I do, large cityscape drawings, city maps, all in 3D, all hand-drawn, and most of them from a sort of bird's eye view. A few of the more recent ones are a bit more of a sort of panorama. So that's, I usually use real places. Most of them are set in Taiwan, since that's where I live. It's just easy. It's around me and it's interesting to me. There are a few older ones that are one's a British one, one's Paris as well. So yeah, most of what I'm doing is focused on that, focused on the sort of urban areas of Taiwan, how they all fit together, exploring them, finding some cool stuff, and then creating drawings out of those findings.
Yeah, man, it's so cool. It's just beautiful. I love that kind of, like you said, that bird's eye view. It kind of reminds me of a game that I used to play when I was a kid called GTA, Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, I used to play that. Yeah,
Did you? Do you remember like the original ones? You would have that bird's eye view.
That sort of top down. Yeah. Oh, that was like right back on PlayStation.
Yeah, PlayStation,
right?
The original PlayStation. That's right. Yeah. That was one of my first games. And my parents were like, "This game seemed violent." I was like, "Don't worry about it."
My parents were fine with it too, because I think all they could see were little sprites going around. The graphics were awful.
The graphics were awful. You couldn't even see yourself. It was like pixelated, like 8-byte. Like, 8-bit, whatever. But nonetheless, yeah. So the aspects that you're focusing on, like you said, were kind of because you were living in Taiwan, and you've been doing now a lot of different cities within Taiwan.
Yes.
So what was kind of the inspiration, I'd say, to do that top-down kind of 3D style art? Has that been something you've always been interested in?
接下来 Tom 分享到当初会有这样子的一个启发，会开始想要画这个风格的 3D 地图，其实是因为自己本身从小就对画画啦、艺术文艺这类的创作很有兴趣，只是小时候画的都是比较偏虚幻城市的，比较是他自己想象出来的地图，而且他后来其实有段时间没有再继续画，反而是开始写诗，是直到之后呢，因缘际会下看到人家画的 3D 地图作品，才又唤醒了他儿时的画画记忆，给他这样子 3D 创作的想法。而且本来一开始还想说，天哪，台北的高楼大厦这么多，好像有点难画耶，结果大概就是太天赋异禀了吧，连台北101也给他画出来。我个人曾经呢在脸书上有看过人家转贴他的作品，真的有够厉害耶，大大小小的细节都有给你画出来，连 John 都说他可以从地图上找出他家是路上的哪一栋楼。我们赶快来继续听吧。
In this kind of style, which I started probably 10 years ago, just before I came to Taiwan, yeah. This style came about around 10 years ago, but before then, as in sort of early childhood, I had been making maps and I'd been making drawings of cities. Usually those were more imagined, more kind of fantasy worlds, this kind of thing. But I feel like this more later style just evolved from that eventually. There was a big gap in my teenage years where I wasn't really drawing much of anything at all. I think I liked making portraits back then. But the current stuff I'm doing now is sort of very connected with what I was doing as like before I was 10 years old, that kind of time.
That's incredible. Yeah, so you were drawing kind of these fantastical maps of these worlds, essentially.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And yeah, sure enough, now as we're doing this on a radio show, we can't really be super visual, but yeah, that's so detailed and it's so focused on kind of, the intricacies of an urban environment, which I love so much. It's because I'm actually super detail oriented.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm like, yes. When I can pinpoint one building, I actually I saw my building
perfect.
on one of your Taipei city maps, and I was just like, this is awesome. Like, here's my building.
Yeah, that's a big thing. It's important to me that it does look like the city it's supposed to be. And I do a lot of research and a lot of walking and photographing to try and make them as accurate as possible, because I kind of want people to be able to find their life on it and to find all the places that they know from it. Because when I started making them, they kind of acted a bit like my diary. So the Nottingham one especially, where I went to college, I brought it with me to Taiwan and had it almost as a really like cool reminder of that time. And then I thought Taipei would be impossible given how high-rise it is and how big and how dense. But I had a it was like an itch I had to scratch. I started to experiment, and then I was like, okay, I can make this work. I can scale 101 a bit so it's not so ridiculously big. And I managed to get a form together that kind of worked.
Yeah, man, and it's beautiful, and I am so intrigued by what you've been doing. So in the sense of, would you say maybe the past 5 years or so, would you say your art really kind of got more appreciation in terms of, you are now commissioning pieces all over the city and you're doing a lot of exhibits? Can you take us maybe through what do you feel kind of helped your art get more noticed and make this more of a career path for you?
再来 Tom 提到一开始画这些地图本来就是他个人的兴趣，而且也只有几个家人朋友知道而已。那后来有一天呢，就想说放一张台北地图在自己脸书上跟朋友分享。那其中一个朋友看到就觉得说，这图太惊人了吧，不转发不行，所以就请他们把那个照片的隐私权设定成公开，让他分享出去给大家看。结果隔天瞬间爆红，这才让 Tom 意识到说，原来有这么多人对他的创作有兴趣。 那后来也因为开始有人要跟他买这些图，就一步一步找印刷公司合作，继续画他的地图。那有人喜欢，他就印出来卖这样子。一开始其实也没想太多啦，是直到有一天呢，发现好像这样子卖画好像蛮可行的哦，比教英文好。所以从那之后呢，就因为那天的一个转发，让 Tom 一夕爆红，到现在展开了自己的画画艺术事业。这里他最后用到的字 viable， 有行得通、可行的意思。好像如果有个方法失败了，行不通，那一般就会去找另外一个其他可行的办法嘛，对不对？那这个时候呢，就可以用 a viable alternative 来表示。好 ，a viable alternative.
Right. I mean, initially, I didn't approach it from the idea that this could be a career. The first few I made, I didn't even really show anyone. They were just this thing I did that my family knew about and a few of my housemates, but that was it. Really, social media was the first indication that, oh, maybe more people are interested in this than I thought it would be. I put the Taipei one up onto Facebook one day, and I didn't even have sort of like a Facebook art page or anything. It was just my own personal profile. And a friend of mine said, like, I want to share this. Can you make it public? So I was like, okay, I made it public, went to sleep, woke up, and it had just sort of spread across Facebook in Taiwan. And I suddenly had sort of 400 odd messages and was just like, oh, what have I done? Very quickly had to sort of scramble around and try and manage this situation. Luckily, I'd started to make a few friends who had seen it had been like, we'd like a print of that. So I found a factory that could make some prints and I started selling those. So luckily I had that in place for when it got a lot of attention. I didn't think too much of it initially. I thought, oh, okay, it's just a big burst of interest, but I'll just keep making them and we'll see what happens. And then that led to exhibitions and then a bit of media attention. And I think it wasn't until 2016 around where I was like, this is actually taking over a bit from my English teaching job. Like this has become kind of viable in a way.
That's great, man. And it just makes me like you even more because, you know, you didn't set out to become, let's say, famous or credible for this artwork. This was very personal to you. And just because you kept doing what you love, now you are kind of reaping the rewards. And I love that so much. Also thinking about a time that I've connected that I saw you was when Esli did a little mini documentary on you. Is that right?
接着 Tom 分享到啊，去年因为这些地图作品真的太红了，还被成品找去拍一部阅读光影系列的短篇纪录片，好，一部微电影，特别呢去介绍他这些画作。那可能也是因为这样子，后来整个的发展啊，还有大家对他创作的兴趣也都一直很稳定，让他可以专心在这块领域发挥。那另外他有提到拍这部片啊，让他很感激很开心的一点是自己本身可能比较不擅长用言语表达自己的想法吧，可能比较知道怎么用画画来说明，所以那时候拍片真的是很感谢制作团队把影片拍得很棒很精致，整个呢就是把他个人内心想要表达的东西编辑传达得很到位。这边我们讲的这部窜红的短篇纪录片或是微电影，可以说micro documentary. 马上来听这段内容。
That's right. Yeah, last summer we filmed a bit around May, and then they put out a sort of micro documentary, I guess about 4 or 5 minutes long. They did a really great job. Like I was really happy with how they put it all together. Sometimes I have trouble communicating messages in what I'm trying to do, and they managed to edit it so it like was really coherent, which is great. And that got like really, really popular, viewed like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times. It really, really blew me away. And then things have been fairly consistently busy since that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I love you touched on the fact that I feel you are such a good communicator, actually, but I know it is hard. As an artist, you're like, how do I talk about these things that I love to create in my mind? So I really respect that that's been something you've been, you know, kind of developing within yourself, and you're doing it now in Mandarin and English, which we will touch on in a few minutes. But the last question I kind of love to ask in terms of your art is, you know, thinking a little bit about the future. So now you are sustaining, your artwork. So people are commissioning you to do a part of a city that is really special to them.
Yes.
I just dropped that, hey, I love Wai'au Beach in Ilan. Can you make that? Of course, just me being selfish over here. But thinking about Tom and your art, is there anything you really want to be focusing on in 2021 and beyond?
在这段访谈里呢，插画大师跟大家稍微透露了一些他未来的计划，有兴趣的各位可要专心听咯。原来他接下来几年呢，打算要出书诶，他想要透过画作去把台北、台中、台南这3个台湾主要城市，从早期到现在的历史给大家娓娓道来。而且更特别的是呢，他还会去找旧档案、旧照片来帮助他画各个年代的街景，好让读者知道说我们台南、台中和台北在以前各个不同的年代那些马路啦、建筑、街景等等是什么样子。他说他希望可以用这种方式呢，去拼凑出整个城市的发展历史。天哪，感觉他的台湾史一定比我好，真是惭愧，需要来好好复习一下，热兰遮城，复习我们的台湾历史。这边我们来看一个很实用的字 archival。 好，各位不知道有没有印象，有听过或是看过嘞？如果你的手机电脑界面是英文的话，那应该在 Gmail 在电子信箱里都有看过 archive 这个功能选项，也就是我们说的封存功能。那这边的 archival 就是从这个字延伸来的，意思有陈年历史的档案。也就是说呢 Tom 他会去找那些旧照片、旧档案，好来帮他画，帮他复原当年的街道样貌。
So the big project that I'll be making will be I want to create a book over the next few years and kind of get the story of Taipei, Taichung and Tainan. I've kind of chosen these 3 main cities, go right through from their early history to the present and through drawings of each era, because something that I don't think a lot of people do is I go back in time. I'll find sort of hundreds of old archival photos and create maps of the city from different eras. And so some of the more recent drawings are things that I've made to go with that project. I'm trying to tie everything together so everything's a little bit book related. So I actually do have a hope of finishing this book at some point. But, other work is also great. And that takes over sometimes too. But that's 2021 onwards will be stuff focused on that.
Beautiful, man. And that is so cool. And I love that you're focusing on, Tainan, Taichung, and Taipei. Oh, man, I'm so excited. I actually love old photographs of cities and old maps. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this book. And I wish you nothing but success with that. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, if you don't mind, Tom, can we switch gears a little bit to, focusing on how your language now is kind of playing a role with your art? So with your gained popularity, with kind of people asking you to do commission pieces and potentially maybe this book, would you say now your Mandarin is playing a big part in your life because maybe, a lot of Taiwanese are reaching out to you to commission pieces or exhibits and you're explaining? Can you share a bit about that?
那不知道各位有没有也跟我一样在想说，那 Tom 他把台湾的街道摸得这么熟，应该是在这里住了蛮久了吧，又是做展览，又是跟人家讲解介绍地图的，而且又打算出书，所以他的中文能力应该是不错哦，每天日常生活中用到中文的机会应该是蛮高的。没错，而且中文对他来讲现在真的是很重要。如果他在介绍地图的时候只用英文没有用中文的话，那可能对他的整个作画的事业影响也是会颇大的。因为他觉得以他个人来讲啦就是如果看到一大串的中文看不懂，那就会直觉性的想要直接划过，没有兴趣花时间去看。所以他就想说，看不懂英文的人可能也会跟他一样，就是看到一大串的英文但是不知道中文意思的时候，可能也就是会一样，就兴趣缺，然后马上就继续滑手机看下一篇发文。好，但是他这样子做双语的发文就不一样，可以让想看英文的人看英文看中文的人看中文。那如果是想学外语的人呢，也刚好有机会可以对照一下中英文的意思，多方便呢。 所以在社群媒体上 Tom 他如果有时间的话呢，都会尽量把中文英文一起写进去，但是这是在有时间的情况下啦吼，毕竟如果急的话，那他这个中文字如果打错用错什么的也是尴尬。
I think that's been a big part of the experience of doing this now. It would have been very hard to do it in English only, partly because a lot of the people who follow my sort of social media pages, I think perhaps their English is probably okay, but I expect, like, when I see a big chunk of Chinese text on Facebook, I'll just scroll past it. Maybe they do the same with English text. Like, oh, too long to translate all this. Off we go. So I try to at least keep every post on the Facebook page bilingual. I try to make all my Instagram stories bilingual as well. Depends if I have the time for a lot of those, because if you make a mistake in that, like, people definitely let you know. Like, since the follower count grew a bit, I now get a good sort of 30 correction messages every time I mess something up on the stories.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, that's amazing though that you're doing that, because I respect you so much and I know what that process is, and I'm shy when I try to speak Chinese, especially when I'm writing, and I hate to make mistakes. And so yeah, like, now you're publishing your work, so you're already feeling like, hey, you're already critiquing my artwork. And now you're critiquing my language. Yeah. Is that messing kind of with the psyche of Tom?
That's I think it's okay. I think it's coming from a good place. It's like and I am learning from it too. Occasionally when it's like a lot of messages, it can be a little discouraging, like, but largely I do appreciate the pointers. I'm like, if it's a really important post, then I'll usually hire someone to translate that for me, because I'm like, well, I'd like to look professional for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's smart, too. But you also mentioned something really important too, is, a lot of your artwork right now is based on Taiwan. So yeah, of course, you are going to have a lot of people who that kind of touches their heart. So I love that you're putting, a lot of your explanations about the process and what this means in Chinese, because that's probably very sentimental to a lot of people that maybe want to commission your work. And so thinking about your book, if you don't mind, are you going to also be doing that largely in English and Mandarin Chinese?
紧接着我们问到了一个大家可能都想知道的问题，那就是他之后要出的这一本书是要用英文还是要用中文啊？如果到时候说我的英文还没练好，我看不懂怎么办嘞？没缓漏，不用担心啦。这本书呢，主要是以图片为主，那文字的部分当然也是会有，但是不会太多啦就是可能会有像注解之类的出现，只是现在它也是说不准，可能未来会出一本中文一本英文，但是也有可能就是直接在英文的底下一起加上中文说明，让大家都可以看得懂。不过当然啦，他也是会确保中文写的是通顺的，然后应该是会聘请专业的来帮他翻译，才不会给读者混淆视听，像在社群媒体上一样把他的意思给大家表达错就糗了。赶快来听这段内容吧。
What I would really love is to have both. I haven't decided yet whether both can fit in one book or if I'd have to make a separate English and Chinese version. It really depends how much I end up writing for it. It's going to be more of a visual book. It's not going to be so writing heavy, I think. But it might be that I can have the English in there and then the Chinese underneath. Yeah, I would definitely hire someone to proofread it if I end up doing the translation.
Yeah, and of course, I don't mean to overshoot here with the language about it, because the focus should be, you're right, on the art that you are creating. Yeah. Well, Tom, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I know this goes a little bit too fast in my liking, but that's kind of leading us to our last question.
Okay.
And it is, if you could go back in time and talk to a younger Tom, would there be any advice you give yourself about language or life or art or anything?
访谈最后呢，我们这位才华洋溢的英国地图画家 Tom Rook 希望可以告诉年轻时候的自己，对于未来呢，不要这么杞人忧天，不用担心这么多啦，真的是没有必要哦。反而呢，多花一点心思在学中文方面还比较实际一点，好好去专心把学校课上完，然后早一点请家教老师，不要中途断掉，不要半途而废，才不会像现在落掉这么多，又要重新开始。那这边有一个字在今天的访谈里面呢出现了不少次哦，不知道各位有没有注意到嘞？这个 chunk 它这边呢有一大部分的意思，所以等一下Tom说他以前花了 a good chunk of my late teens and early 20s， 就在表达他10几20岁那几年呢花了很多时间在担心这个担心那个的。好 a good chunk of，或者我们也可以说 a big chunk of 什么什么什么，就是很大一部分的什么什么什么这样。好，那我们现在就马上来听访谈最后这段内容吧。
Let's think. The younger me, I guess starting with life, I'd be like, stop worrying so much, younger me. Like, stop worrying about the future so much. It's, I feel like I spent a good chunk of my late teens and early 20s just panicking about the future, and for no really good reason. I wish I could sort of go back and just be like, don't need to do that. For language, I think I have a trouble in that, like, I'm quite good at self-teaching myself a lot of stuff, but with language, I haven't done a very good job of that at all. I think if I could go back, I'd have kept up classes at university longer, and I'd have like hired a tutor sooner. Because I feel like in the interim years when I stopped the classes, I just lost so much Chinese ability. And now I'm sort of playing catch up a bit with it. So definitely, unless you're really, really super self-motivated with language, like I kind of should have stuck with a tutor.
Yeah. Interesting perspective on worrying too. Yeah, that's nice to hear that though, that you've kind of, it sounds like you've grown from that.
Yeah.
Know, and you've kind of come to more of a self-acceptance, maybe
right.
of who you are and what the world is at large.
Right. I feel like, especially with that sort of anxiety of the future things, I think a lot of people get it, and it can be a really good motivator sometimes too. So I wouldn't want to like completely eliminate it, because then I'd probably just be like, well, I don't care about anything, whatever.
Yeah,
it has helped a little bit, but balance and moderation and that are good too.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Tom, thank you again for making some time for us today on NG Ingwen. So obviously this has been an audio podcast, but I know, hopefully a lot of people want to see your artwork. So where can they find you on social media, or maybe your websites or anything like that?
I have an Instagram that's called Tom Rook Art. That's kind of a mix of art stuff and then any kind of hiking adventures I go on end up on there too. For just art stuff, I keep the Facebook page at Tom Rook Art more just focused on art stuff.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so Tom Rook, R-O-O-K Art.
Yeah.
On all the socials.
Yes.
Beautiful, my man. Well, thank you again for joining us today, and I can't wait to see more of your work in the future.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Tom. Bye, everyone.
All right, bye, guys.
Peace. All right, well, that is our NG Ingwen show for today. We hope everyone enjoyed listening to that. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and now Spotify. You can search NG Ingwen, or you can search on IG, NG English ICRT. And don't forget to tune in every Wednesday morning from 6:30 to 7, and Wednesday night from 9 to 9:30. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
好啦，今天的节目就到这边告一段落啦，感谢各位的收听，别忘了订阅我们的 Spotify 还有 YouTube 频道哦。那喜欢我们节目的话，也要记得到 Instagram 到 IG 上追踪我们哦。如果各位有什么其他问题是想要问来宾的，也请欢迎在底下留言告诉我们，我们一定会想办法帮你问到手。好啦，那就下周在空中相会咯，拜拜。